The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Thanks for hanging out. Great to be with you on a Tuesday. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Connor Clark is, well, duct taped into the studio. Great to be with you. Let's pray the rain stays away for a little afternoon baseball to finish up for Nebraska Creighton. That gets going at 5. And then the final game of the rubber match at 7 at Charles Schwab Field. Numbers to get in, 489-1240, 489-1240, 800-825-5865. Can watch the show and interact, if you so choose, on the StreamYard. Can do so at the Hail Varsity YouTube channel or the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed at HVarsity Radio. Give that a follow. Watch our show, Hail Varsity. Watch Coffee and Cream with Damon and Andrew, 7 to 10 weekday mornings, part of the Hurrdat family. So that's what's set for us. And email, always get in there, Chris at HailVarsity.com. Last thought when it comes to Twitter, at Schmidt_radio is my Twitter, at Herbal Essence for Elijah Herbel, at C_Clark_27 for Connor Clark. It's kind of like that 18-letter last name on the back of a baseball jersey that you feel bad for the equipment manager that's got to stitch those on. That is Connor Clark's Twitter handle.
You guys remember T.J. Hushmanzada from the Cincinnati Bengals?
I do. And the Romanowski last name always seemed like a chore to put on the back of the Niners or Denver jersey, on top of him possibly headbutting you and eating raw meat.
Well, one of these days I'm going to come back here with a custom Cubs jersey that has that Twitter handle on the back of it, and I'm going to give to both of you one of those. So,
well, how long?
I like
ago
the
was
road jerseys.
All right.
How long ago was it that Connor would know this? I think it was probably David Montgomery. It was a Chicago Bears running back, had the name misspelled on his jersey.
That's
bad. Oh, yeah.
That was just like a couple years ago.
That was a couple years ago. That was interesting. There's also another Cub right now that you could substitute my Twitter handle for. His last name is Crow Armstrong, and it is probably the biggest, arch of a last name on a jersey I've ever seen.
Or how about this? I just Googled this one because I knew there was another one I was thinking of. Whenever Indiana had the name of Indiana spelled wrong on the front of their jerseys.
That was tough.
Indiana.
There's been some good last names. Steinkühler for sure was a long one on back. There's more. We'll talk more. We'll get Babber's take on this, the long last names. We'll dive in and hear from Matt Rhule. He sat down with Greg Sharp last night on Sports Nightly, and just kind of a final thought on spring football. A lot of talking up, and I appreciate that with the offensive line. Mitch Sherman's with us in 15 minutes. In hour 2, we'll spend some time with Tom Shatel, get his take on some Husker football, Husker baseball, as Tom's got a busy day, but he's given us a few minutes at 5. And then Joba Chamberlain will join us, Husker great and World Series champ, on Husker baseball and thoughts on some state baseball, as Joba's had a chance to see much of Class A this year, being a proud dad watching Carter play ball for Southwest. So that is what is in store. So I got to ask you this. This came out from Fox Sports, and let's mull it over for a moment. I've got my list, and there's about 4 teams as Nebraska fan you really didn't like growing up. And Fox Sports tweeted out the question, give me the one player you're a fan of from your all-time rival. So you love to hate them, but man, you respect them. And there's a handful. If I were to circle, like in my era of fandom, I still have to put Colorado as Nebraska's rival. I know Oklahoma is and always will be, but for my childhood, it really shifted from Oklahoma to Colorado. and they were really a battle every October or early November. Miami is the team you always, and you couldn't wait to beat. I don't know if you guys made it or were coherent. I think you were. But when Miami came up here in 2014, the blood in the water around Memorial Stadium, the Miami finally came to Lincoln for a night game. That atmosphere was a carnival. It was incredible. Nebraska fans are always nice, but they had a super hard edge to them on top of tailgating all day and then getting there for kickoff for the night game. So I have 4 teams. It's probably a little too broad. If you want to narrow it down to 1 or 2, you can send your emails in, chris@halevarsity.com. But Texas, you love to hate Texas just because they jacked with you in the Big 12 and you really didn't beat them that often. But the guy that got a standing O at Memorial Stadium after he ran for 200 yards against a really good defense was Ricky Williams. Yep. Pretty much won his Heisman, had a great career, but won the Heisman. Musburger's doing the game. That game actually stopped and snapped Nebraska's 48 or 49 home game win streak. And Williams went for 200. Mike Brown had 20 tackles, Nebraska's safety that played for the Bears. And Ricky Williams got a standing O from the Nebraska faithful. They were applauding, get the hell off the field, quit running the ball on us. But in all sincerity, I mean, the guy earned it in a 20-16 ball game with a redshirt freshman at quarterback for Texas. Nebraska was an injured team that year in '98, but hell of a good ball game, tough ball game for Nebraska. Ricky Williams going for 2 bills. Nebraska didn't give up rushing yards in that era. And for Ricky to do it was super impressive.
And that was actually the first place my mind went whenever you brought up this question. But I had 2 Texas Longhorns. The first being Ricky Williams. The other one was not Vince Young. How about a guy that everyone kind of forgets about?
Priest?
2009. Who stole Nebraska's soul in the Big 12 title game?
The kicker.
Justin Tucker.
Oh, the Baltimore kicker.
Yeah, who is now arguably the greatest kicker to ever do it. Hated that guy. That day after the Big 12 title game. December 2009, Elijah was an unhappy camper. He's like, that damn Texas kicker, he never should have had the chance. A little did I know that guy would go on to be a future first ballot Hall of Famer in the NFL, and I've loved to watch everything he's done in the NFL since.
And meanwhile, Husker's been was holding his place.
And that's kind of why we're
holding the kick for him with Sam Cook for 100
I can't
years.
really hold hard feelings because I went, man, if there was anyone to beat Nebraska in that Big 12 title game, how about it? Arguably the best kicker of all time, if not top 3 kicker of all time. You can't be mad at that one. Got to respect him.
Jordan Shipley is the Texas villain for Crew. Oklahoma is Keith Jackson for me. Boz is an easy take, and Boz is a popular take. But all Keith Jackson did was just make plays. And be it a push-off or not, he was a giant body at 6'3", 260. And I even loved watching him in Philly all those years go against the Giants because Randall Cunningham had always fined Keith Jackson. And then the announcer, Keith Jackson, let me tell you about Keith Jackson. I mean, when he'd be doing a Sooner game, I got a kick out of that. So Ricky Williams, Keith Jackson. For the Buffs, it was Darian Hagan. And it was pretty surreal talking to Hagan 4 years ago. He's an assistant with the Buffs and has been for a lot of years, but he was a quarterback that was coming to Nebraska. And Bill McCartney goes into his living room in Compton and says, son, you can't wear red back home because of the gang warfare going on. That was like legit. That was McCartney's pitch against Nebraska. Well, are you going to get shot wearing red at home when you come home for the summer? Like, it's a little too real, Coach.
Didn't think about it like that, Coach.
No, but Hagan was phenomenal. He was great. And then for Miami, the Hurricanes, there's a lot of villains. Jimmy Johnson, Gino Torretta. But I got to go Warren Sapp. Warren Sapp was a flat-out baller, was incredible. And then when push came to shove, didn't have enough juice left in the fourth quarter in that 95 Orange Bowl. So there's my 4 all-time guys I totally respect or I'm a fan of or I think they're a hell of a good football player for my rival. I'm sure you guys can vary from a pro standpoint or college, and you may have some way more recent names than the names I've drudged up, but those are the four I have.
Yeah, I'm trying to go through my Rolodex here since Nebraska's joined the Big Ten of guys I hated whenever they played Nebraska, but you either respected them or they turned it into a pro career that you respect. And I'm trying to go through my Rolodex, Connor, of guys that were around in 2012, 2013. I think of Le'Veon Bell, that Michigan State
Wisconsin
game
running back, Melvin Gordon.
Oh, yeah, you go Melvin Gordon. But do you remember that game at home against a good Michigan State team where Le'Veon Bell was like top running back in the country? And Nebraska did a pretty good job bottling him up that game. He had a couple big runs, and Michigan State ended up winning the game. That's probably the first place my mind goes in terms of...
He was so good.
Guy I hated in college, but you know what? I respect the hell out of him since he's made a pro career of it and looking back. Or maybe Josie Jewell from Iowa, but that's probably just because he's a Denver Bronco. I'm trying to go through the Big Ten Rolodex is more difficult than the Big 12 memories.
You could not necessarily pick a player, but a coach, and he's got pretty unanimous respect. Fitzgerald, Northwestern's made Nebraska's time in the Big Ten painful from time to time. Aside from the Hail Mary.
I would agree with that. I mean, I'm on the other side of that, though, because...
because he's your guy.
Right.
Sure.
I don't really have...
There's not a Cardinal or a Brewer.
Oh, well, if you want to go outside of college football.
And you don't have to go college. Those are my guys.
I mean, honestly, the first name that came to mind when this conversation came up was LeBron when he was with Miami.
Okay.
Because he was like the ultimate villain in the NBA, just period. And oh, by the way, that's when the Bulls still had MVP caliber Derrick Rose, Jimmy Butler, those teams, Joakim Noah. LeBron doesn't go to the Heat. The Bulls are maybe in the finals a couple of times, and they maybe win one, right? But LeBron, year after year in the playoffs,
I just remember
destroyed us.
Joakim going there, Hollywood is hell, man.
I mean, it was so just frustrating. So and the greatest, like, obviously you have to respect LeBron and his career and his entire body of work, especially now. But, like, as a Bulls fan, especially, like, a Bulls fan who was, like, 10, it was just like heartbreaking to see. It was so frustrating.
It was the same for me with Kobe Bryant and the Lakers, because that was whenever the Nuggets had their good teams. That was Carmelo Anthony and AI. And then every single year they'd run into the buzzsaw of the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals. And because of Kobe, the Nuggets have never made an NBA Finals in their entire history, solely because of one man, because every single time the Western Conference Finals would roll around, it was Nuggets versus Lakers. I think it happened 3 times. And all 3 times, Kobe just absolutely stabbed little Elijah Herbel through the heart and ended the Nugget season. Well, this is fun. We'll get Mitch's take. We'll talk to Tom Shatel about it. So pretty interesting discussion point. But a rival you love to hate. Who's the player you're a fan of, or at least have respect for, that maybe sent you to bed in tears? I think the Machine is also a good one for me. Pujols. Oh yeah, he was. Respect him. Totally. But killed us. He absolutely did it to a lot of teams. Yeah. Guys, we'll get Mitch's thoughts. Want to spend a second here on Coach Rhule, and what do you make of, or do you make anything of it? We'll get to the Iowa baseball stuff too, and Coach Forenza's presser yesterday, but the continual talking point and praise for the offensive line. Do you like it? Do you believe it? Or do you just understand it? I mean, those are 3 choices. I understand it. Well, you got why and how come you're continuing to talk them up. And do you think there's just a stick and there's this giant piñata that's, I don't know, a pipeline piñata somewhere? It's full of jerky. Right, that's full of full of amazing jerky. Well played there, Connor. Folks are just uncertain because they haven't seen it yet with the offensive line. Doesn't mean it can't happen, doesn't mean that the work's not being put in, but honestly, there is a see it to believe it portion of the fan base, and I don't blame them, because the offensive line is what and how the offense is going to go, whether they want to be balanced or whether they want to run the football or you want to unleash Jeff Sims. All of that is dependent on the offensive line. And I think that the biggest reason for me to have blind faith in the offensive line is the experience, right? 2, the other part of that is they've not really been given an opportunity
to just go do what they do well. We don't know what they do well. We've had an offensive coordinator or a system that this is what it's going to be. It's going to be quarterback-centric under Adrian, and you're going to throw the ball 75 times with Whipple. You get a coordinator in there, I think you can hone in and find what the offensive line does well, and then you'll see a different offensive line.
Well, you're at a place right now you haven't seen a good offensive line at Nebraska since 2016. If you're a member of that offensive line, you haven't had a successful offensive line during your entire time at Nebraska. So I think there's part of that politicalness from Matt Rhule of saying, you know what, I believe in these guys. You got to pump them up now. But then also, the fan base knows what's been going wrong with the offensive line over the course of the past 7 seasons. They haven't been physical enough. They haven't been good enough. They haven't really fit that mantra of a Big Ten offensive line. And I think this is Matt Rhule's effort of kind of not only telling the guys, but telling the fans, like, we have a system. We know how to build a Big Ten offensive line. We believe in that system. We believe in these guys. We're getting there. And I think he wants to reassure the fans that just because you've seen 7 years of poor offensive line play doesn't mean that we can't get things fixed in an offseason. Maybe not perfect, maybe not best offensive line in the Big Ten, but you can get them to a point where they're not going to be losing you 5-6 ball games a year.
They're sound, and it's been more of the offensive line, but they absolutely can become reliable this 2023 season and be part of this solution. Mitch Sherman's on the way. It's good to have you in on a Tuesday. It's Hail Varsity. We're presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Welcome in with the Athletic. Mitch Sherman joins us at Mitch Sherman on Twitter. Mitch, how's it going, man? Thanks for the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's going all right. How are you?
We're good. We are good. So I got to ask you this out of the gate before we talk some Huskers. Mitch, who was the team you considered a rival or loved to dislike as a sports fan growing up?
Growing up, it would have had to have been Oklahoma, Colorado. I think pretty much unquestionably those were the teams in my generation that got under my skin the most. So You're looking for my most liked or disliked player.
Well, your most, I guess, respect. What player from the Buffs or Sooners did you, could you begrudgingly say, man, that guy's good, wish he was playing for the Big Red?
Yeah, I would have say Darian Hagan.
Yep. Okay. Yep.
He was a beast, and probably there were a lot of them. Probably Keith Jackson.
Oh wow.
Go back a few years earlier, but he tormented Nebraska quite a bit.
So you and I are absolutely on the same page. Those are my two answers. Absolutely.
Okay. I did not hear you.
That's all right. I zoomed out to go Texas and Miami as well because I didn't put on the old media hat or start with the old mighty KRNU radio till post Ricky Williams. So Ricky Williams in 98 and then Warren Sapp in 95. Those are the guys. Because you got to throw in Texas and Miami too, I would think.
Ricky was my first ever Heisman vote, so I liked him. But that was as a working person. When I was still in the world of being a fan, Texas was pretty much out of mind. Mm-hmm. So they came onto the scene for Nebraska in '96. I was already in college, working a little bit, so there were people that disliked that year for sure for Texas in '96 from that game in St. Louis. But Miami, that stretches way back, and I don't know. I really didn't like anybody that wore the Miami uniform. I think if I have to dig deep into my childhood and think about those games in the '80s against Miami, I don't think I liked any of those players. Maybe had some respect for Bernie Kosar to do what he did as a freshman, but I was too young to appreciate it.
See, along those same lines, Mitch, I wasn't a guy who was alive in the 80s and 90s to really know what the true temperature of Husker Nation was. But what are your guys' thoughts on Brian Bosworth? Because that's like the guy I look back on in terms of an Oklahoma Sooner that everybody loved to hate, but you had to respect the game.
Boz, we talked to him a while back for the 30 for 30, and he was just the most fun to chat with. He was incredible, and he loved Nebraska. He loved pimping Nebraska. He loves selling Boz Sucks T-shirts or having somebody sell Boz Sucks T-shirts on the corner of 10th and Vine. and he was a hell of a good player. He's been humbled a lot in his life. So I got a haircut kind of like Boz. Unfortunately, we burned all those pictures. But I don't know, Mitch. I respected Mitch or Boz Mitch at middle linebacker. He just found ways to win.
He got humbled by Bo Jackson in the NFL. That's
yes, he
sure.
did.
I mid-'80s, so my appreciation of the game was a little different. I'm sure I didn't like him at the time, but after he got done playing, and I've never had the chance to interview him, but from the sounds of it, I would like his mentality and his attitude, and I know he had fun all the time with himself and with the game, and those are kind of players. If they play for the other team, that you do, deep inside, even though you hate them on the surface, you maybe kind of like them. For Nebraska, Roger Thomas was kind of that guy. A little bit later in the rivalry than Boz. They might have had a little bit of crossover, but the Sandman, he had that swag and that attitude too, and he was one of the first guys that, well, at least in that late 80s heading into the 90s, that brought that kind of style and energy back to the Black Shirts, and of course that ended up leading to championships. I think he was on the very ground level of that. He didn't play with the guys necessarily that won the championships, but he played with the guys who played with the guys, and I think that means something. And Bosworth, of course, was the same thing for Oklahoma.
Mitch Sherman's with us at Hail Varsity Radio. Mitch with The Athletic, at Mitch Sherman on Twitter. Mitch, Coach Rhule had his sit-down with the Husker Network last night, a lot of things covered. And we were talking about this before we had you come on. And what do you think of the commentary, the continued commentary, praise, build-up of the offensive line?
You were going to say for John Bullock.
No.
Starting linebacker. We'll see if when Reimer and Henrich come back, how that's going to go. But there are some walk-ons among that group, not on the offense, on the offensive line too, but there's walk-ons all over the roster who I think have really taken advantage of this coaching change to just be seen in a different light. Mm-hmm. So different answer to a different question. But on the offensive line, from the very beginning with Matt Rhule, it was evident that he wasn't going to do anything that he thought could in any way be interpreted by those linemen as tearing them down. Mm-hmm. I think the first thing that he knew he had to do with that group was try to build them up and create some confidence. And you can't coach people to be confident, but you can do things around them and coach them in a certain way that helps them gain confidence, that puts them in a position to gain confidence. And that's where they had to start with the offensive line. And then I do think there's a much different look to the line right now than what Matt Rhule saw on film when he watched those guys in 2022. You have Nuri Nuili back at a guard spot, able to help at tackle, as we saw in the spring game. If somebody goes down, you have Turner Corcoran, who can slide and play a number of positions. And you seem to have a different guy, at least physically, in Bryce Benhart. And I think that's one of the guys for sure where they're really working on his mentality and his confidence. You have Teddy Prohaska back. You have Ben Scott as a transfer who has experience at the center spot and at tackle. So they are a different offensive line just on paper from what they were last year. And, I think he legitimately watches those games, and there's certainly some truth to this, and thinks they got hammered more than they should have.
Okay.
That's true. I mean, did they play the time? No. Did they deserve as much criticism as they got? I do not think that they did. There were things that they did that were all right, and then you really have to take into consideration everything that was happening behind the scenes with the coaching transition in the offseason before last year, Nuri's suspension, the offensive coordinator not being on the same page with the head coach about how they wanted to run things with the offensive line, a new offensive line coach who was just kind of out there, maybe unsure about how his two different bosses wanted things to work. So there was a lot going on. Injuries at the quarterback spot with the offensive line that made them look worse than they were. So it's not surprising that Matt Rhule has just continually tried to prop those guys up, and that's a factor, and it will play. If they play better this year, significantly better, I think you can look to the offseason and say that they started to build the confidence, and that that's where it began.
Mitch, I'm inclined to believe that this offensive line can and should be better than they were last season for this upcoming year. But the number one place I still have a concern with the offensive line is with the depth. And for a coaching staff that has preached competition and the importance of having guys competing for starting spots, do you worry that there isn't enough depth among the two deep in Nebraska's starting line to create good fall competition for starting spots?
If they have injuries, yes. I mean, if they have the guys that they have right now and you put Prohaska back in there, then that gives you another tackle, and I think you really create some depth if you take Turner Corcoran and he doesn't have to be a starting tackle. If Benhart and Prohaska are your starting tackles and Turner can play as a swing tackle, and then you don't have to worry about messing with Newely at the tackle spot, and Henry Lutovsky can be a backup guard, or maybe he pushes the starters at guard. If Corcoran's a starter at guard, that gives you some real depth there. And I think Gunnar Gatula is another key there, is a guy who came in as an early enrollee and can be somebody who gives your tackles some rest. So they don't necessarily need contributions from the true freshman other than Gatula. And he may just play 4 games, who knows, but he's going to be the first one who's ready because of his semester on campus. And I don't think they need a ton other than, just a breather here or there perhaps, or just practice reps from those walk-ons. And some of the young walk-ons like Dylan Parrott, like Keegan Menning, they like those guys. Not to say that they're going to factor like in the top 7 or 8 linemen, but that matters because they help you in practice. So, right now, Elijah, I think there's a map, there's a formula, there's a way that they can have good depth on the offensive line, but it's walking a fine line because they're not like 3 deep anywhere. And I think that sometimes it's proven in college football in the Big Ten that you have to be, but by the time you get into weeks 8, 9, 10, 11, you're way down on your depth. Right now they're okay, but I don't know where they'll be in November.
Mitch Sherman is with us on Hail Varsity Radio, and Mitch, just a minute or two here, but I know we're a couple of weeks removed from the spring game, but did that performance from what you saw from the offensive line during that spring game kind of make you buy into that praise, so to say, of the offensive line?
Yeah, not necessarily. I mean, they ran for like 2.6 yards a carry. Did okay protecting the quarterbacks, but there were 18 tackles for loss by the defensive linemen, and they were really strapped in the spring game. That was a place where the depth was an issue. You didn't have Prohaska. Corcoran went down at one point. Obviously the freshmen who were coming in weren't there. The linemen were playing for both teams, so you expect that there were going to be some holes. And there were. I didn't see things in the spring game that gave me tremendous reason for concern, knowing how it's going to be different in August. But I also didn't see anything where I was like, okay, this is different. This is great. These guys are going to be a strength of the team. I did not see that.
Mitch, what's coming up from you here with the Athletic, bud?
Got a big recruiting piece coming out tomorrow. Today is Dylan Rayola's 18th birthday, and for me that was kind of a almost a do or die date. And I know this thing has kind of turned anticlimactic, where we think we know what's going to happen, but we don't necessarily. And he committed to Ohio State a year ago on this day, and I had kind of thought in my mind, if we got past this point and he was still out there, that it wasn't a good sign for Nebraska. And I think it's just like a symbolic turning of the page. Sure, they're going to still continue to recruit him, and he's their number one priority as a quarterback. But if they don't get him, where does this class go? Is it a disappointment? Just from the jump, because you're not going to get some of the pieces that came with him. And then I looked at a lot of the in-state players, just where Nebraska sits. It's slowly but surely this is becoming a very good year. Again, like last year in the state of Nebraska for 24 players, there's 10 right now with Power 5 offers, and I think very soon there'll be more than 10. So, where does Nebraska stand with all of those guys? And I tried to answer that question in a piece coming out tomorrow.
That'll be awesome. Mitch, have a good day, and thanks for the time, bud.
Okay, thanks a lot.
All right, there he is, Mitch Sherman with us here on Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Big thanks to Mitch Sherman. That'll be on the podcast, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play is where you can get the full show or segments of the show. Tom Shatel with us here in about 25 minutes. Joba Chamberlain to talk some Husker baseball. And you can get in 489-1240, 489-1240 if you want to dial up and give us that villain you had a little bit of respect for a rival that was going to cause some heartache for you as a sports fan. Good question by Fox Sports. And Mitch and I did not call. We're not wearing the same shirt, nor are we, by coincidence, telepathically saying the same things with Darian Haggett and Keith Jackson. You just kind of know if you grew up in a certain era with Nebraska football. Who's on the horn?
We've got Chris.
Okay, let's go to the lines. Chris, welcome in. Thanks for calling.
Hey there. Great show. I'd love to share the optimism on the commitment to the run, but the coordinator we got passed the ball more than any other offensive coordinator in college football last year. He's kind of a pass-happy guy.
I think they were ranked 15. I think they were ranked 59th. But yeah, when you've got.
But I believe but I think they threw the ball more than. That's what I'd heard somewhere, that they had actually thrown the ball more than anybody else. I don't know.
Yeah, that came up with Rhule last night, and that was corrected. But no, it's a fair concern. It's a fair concern. Are you going to be able to run the football when you want to run the football next year?
Right, and that's, hopefully, I know Rhule is a really good offensive line coach. So hopefully, whatever issues we had last year and with Rhule as the line coach can be rectified this year, because he did keep the guy who had the weakest position group last year on staff. So he's going to have some egg on his face if there's not a drastic improvement.
Chris, let me ask you, how much do you put on Rhule? I know that's his position group, and I think Mitch outlined it. There's two bosses that had differing theories on top of maybe not taking your input, and I think it goes beyond Rhule. It may even go back to Greg Austin.
Yeah.
So,
but I'm also a Bears fan, and they had the worst offensive line the previous year when Rhule was an assistant offensive line coach. So, I'm not really high on Rhule. His experience does not speak well of him being a good offensive line coach, and I hope it's just can be fixed by Rhule. He sees something, obviously. I hope he didn't just keep him on so they would have a chance of getting his nephew. As quarterback.
I don't think you can do that. I pray you didn't do that. And I think there's enough eyeballs with Rhule, with Satterfield, with Foley. You've got about 3 or 4 guys who've coached offensive line somewhere at some time, along with Raiola's backdrop, to formulate 5 good offensive linemen and then some subs, hopefully. The point is they'll emphasize it, Chris, and they want to emphasize it in the fourth quarter when you got to emphasize it and be good at it.
Yeah, that to be able to run the ball in the fourth quarter and just stay committed to it is just essential, especially in the Big Ten, because we tried Frost tried the small ball, the fast, speedy small ball early on, and learned that just doesn't really work. So hopefully Rhule will learn from previous staff mistakes and go with the run the ball guy.
Appreciate it. Chris, thanks for the phone call. Appreciate it. Hey, it's okay. Let's hear the comment here from Rhule.
Really fast, I just want to say I did some digging into the stats in South Carolina's offense last year. 421 passing attempts on the entire season, which is about on par with what Ohio State did last year. Mm-hmm. When you think of a pass-happy team in the Big Ten, who do we think of based on the past couple of years?
Purdue and Ohio State.
Yeah, I was going to go with Purdue. Purdue, the most pass-happy team, had almost 600 attempts last season on the year. So South Carolina, 421 passing attempts. Compare that to 411 rushing attempts. So they were pretty balanced. Yeah,
and they had Rattler. Let's hear from Rhule on the offensive line and his comments. He was with Greg Sharp last night on the Husker Network, and again, really talking up this offensive line on the work they're putting in, and wants them really to get some slack. He's not saying, hey, give these guys some slack, but he's kind of saying it in the sense of they are doing the work to be really, really good.
Yeah, I like the offensive line. I think they suit us really well. They're going to be good for what we do. I think we have to continue to develop depth. I think we have to continue to develop the young players. But I like the group. I like the walk-on players that we have in that group as well. And I think they'll play well for us. Sat It's one of the reasons why I made Sat coach the offensive line at Carolina. He'd be assistant line coach. You can call plays all day. Calling plays in college football is not like playing Madden. You have to take the matchups into account. And so, we have to do a good job of balancing our run pass, balancing, helping guys versus great players. But I think Donovan Rhule does a tremendous job. Aaron Cooling does a great job as his assistant, and the players. I'll just tell Cornhusker fans this because I talk a lot about the O-line. There is no other position on our team more bought in to being a Nebraska Cornhusker than those O-linemen. They work at a level I've never seen a group work at. So I hope everyone's rooting for them because they deeply, deeply care, and they deeply want to make everyone proud. They deeply want to honor the legacy of the pipeline. They cannot be working harder at it. So if there's a reason why I won't take shots at them, it's because I honor people's work. I see how hard they work. I see how much they care. Their passion motivates me, and everyone should be rooting for our offensive line to play really well this year.
That's really strong words, and you love that. As you know, you're a work in progress. You love that, and they're not empty. He's gone everywhere with the same message about, he's proud of them. You still got to get results. And he's betting that they'll have results next year.
Yeah, and it kind of brings me back to that old adage, hard work beats talent when talent fails to work hard. Obviously, I've said this before on the show, I'll say it again, there is an amendum I always like to add, but if the talent does work hard, you're effed. That's what we heard growing up a little bit. So you have to keep that in mind whenever you talk about this offensive line. Yeah, they're working hard, but they're going up against, in terms of competition, a lot of talented defensive lines. And whenever you compare them to other Big Ten offensive lines, there's a lot of talented offensive lines in the Big Ten as well. So it's not like hard work is the one-way ticket. You're guaranteed success. It's a great way to start. It's a great way to get there.
It's a great way to get better.
Great way to get better. It's not guaranteeing success, but I believe Matt Rhule whenever he says that this offensive line is one of the hardest working groups on the team right now, and they embody what it means to be a Cornhusker. I just want to make sure we know that does not guarantee success in the fall. Success is a combination of hard work and talent.
Don't ask your freshman or your redshirt freshman to go one-on-one and win 80% of the snaps against an All-American rush end than win in the NFL draft. That happened a lot in 2021. It happened too much in 2021. And it was not good for Nebraska when it came to being able to do what they want to do.
And Matt chimes in, I'm definitely rooting for them, but does that comment come across as 20 pukes a day-ish?
No.
They've upped it to 20.
It was more polished. It wasn't bragging about how hard they're working by how much yakage with, yakage total. We'll wind down this first hour. Get a rundown, Tom Shatel. Next hour, Joba Chamberlain at Hail Varsity at Tuesday, presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for spending time at Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Reminder about your friends at Dyer Law. Workers' comp, personal injury. They have the answer for both. If you've been hurt in a personal injury accident, you can count on Dyer Law and the team to provide you with a helping hand when you need it, no matter what you're dealing with. Call Dyer Law and the team today at 402-393-7529 or visit dyer.law to chat with the trusted professionals about your personal injury claim. That's dyer.law, dyer.law, 402-393-7529. And they can take care of that personal injury accident settlement and legal expertise you need. Some recruiting news. Carter Nelson is heading on down to Athens. He has taken his official visit to Athens. Shockingly enough, or not shockingly enough, the same weekend as Dylan Raiola's official visit down to Georgia. And there was a song by one Charlie Daniels, Devil Went Down to Georgia, and was on the charts forever. No Devils there, just great football and an opportunity for, we'll see if Dylan ends up there. Didn't know it was Dylan's birthday today, but you got to wonder when the timeline is. And he's told different national recruiting outlets there is no timeline, but don't kid yourself. If you're Matt Rhule, if you're Kirby Smart, you want a timeline. What are you going to tell me? Are you going to sign with me, USC? I mean, there's got to be some sort of idea. And if you're Carter Nelson, I mean, you got your pick. You got your pick on where to go. Nebraska signed 2 tight ends this class. We'll see if everybody stays a tight end, but it's not been for lack of effort for Nebraska to get to Carter Nelson. He's just that explosive of an athlete.
Mm-hmm. And you wonder, with Nebraska picking up another tight end in Keelan Smith earlier in the week, or I guess that would have been last Friday now. You look at that and you go, is Nebraska thinking that they're seeing the writing on the wall with Carter Nelson? Are they seeing Nelson going down to Georgia and getting recruited hard down there? They already picked up Ian Flint. Now Keelan Smith's in the boat. You tie the dots together and you go, is Nebraska feeling like they might be out of this recruitment?
Sure, they'd take a third, but you don't want to be stuck just being able to get one.
Yeah.
You have 2 you really like and a third you really want, but it may not be in the cards for you, which is no good.
It's simple, Georgia. With all that winning, they got a fiddle made of gold, a shiny fiddle made of gold.
That they do, and by the way, they just send you off to the NFL. Not that Nebraska hasn't or can't get back to doing it, but they got to start doing it again.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll spend some time. Tom Shatel from the Omaha World-Herald. I know Nebraska baseball scheduled to get rolling here and finish up that second game at Charles Schwab Field. Things are tied at 4 into the 7th. We'll see if Nebraska can close that out and then get some things going in game 2 at 7. Yes.
Well, we're talking Omaha. Quick recruiting note here. Omaha North was visited today by the University of Iowa. You'd assume that would be the defensive lineman Tyson Terry that they're talking to. That was Coach Barnett, George Barnett, the offensive line coach from Iowa at Omaha North today. So the Hawkeyes making some inroads into Iowa today as well.
They have done well in the city of Iowa, or I should say the city of Omaha. Iowa's done really well, and no shock there. The latest on Iowa gambling issues, Iowa and Iowa State. Story from ESPN we'll get to next hour. Kirk Ferentz, or I should say Ferentz, Captain Kirk will. You'll hear from him on it. Hour 2 on the way with Hail Varsity.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Thanks for spending time. It's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency. As we welcome in tremendous rider award winner with the Omaha World-Herald, Tom Shatel with us at Tom Shatel, OWH, where you find him on Twitter, omaha.com, where you read him. Tom, thanks for a few minutes, man. How's your Tuesday?
Great, Chris. Thanks for having me. I wish I was at the Hail Varsity Club ordering wings.
So do I, man. Wings and a beer sounds all right now. It's a good thought, and we'll have to rendezvous again real soon and have you out, man. I always appreciate you jumping on. And I wanted to get your take, and I saw the project you're working on, and I can't wait for it. Remembering Memorial Stadium, 100 years, and you're going to do an incredible story and feature with the World-Herald on that. Is there a performance that is stuck with you by an opponent in your time covering Nebraska? I'm sure there's more than one, but is there a top 2 or 3 that are burned into your brain?
Well, boy, that's a hard one. I would say, I'll narrow it down this way. Nothing that's happened since they joined the Big Ten has been that memorable to me at home. I'll just do it that way.
Yeah.
I could just go on and on.
I've got 2. I've got Ricky Williams in '98, and I got Barry Sanders in '88. Yeah,
I missed that one. I was on that October 15th '88 game. I was in Norman, Oklahoma, covering K-State. Oklahoma must have beat him by 80. Just the year before they hired Bill Snyder. Uh-huh. And I remember going back to the Holiday Inn by the Oklahoma City airport, turning on the news, and they had all their TV guys from Oklahoma City were up in Lincoln talking about this incredible game between Oklahoma State and Nebraska, and people were just starting to meet Barry Sanders then. So I remember that game. I didn't get to watch it. The Oklahoma games in 84, 86 were just, the most impressive was probably 87 because that was 1 versus 2. It wasn't a great shootout, but a hell of a defensive game. And, Oklahoma's defense really played well. They played great. But the 84, 86, goal line stand with Bosworth in 84, 86, Jamel Holloway and Keith Jackson, the comeback. These are all heartbreakers. I hate to bring them up. These are all heartbreakers. But, just the one that stood out will always be number one for me was my very first game there. November 18th, 1978. I was a junior at Missouri, school paper, the Man-Eater, drove up, went to sweep left right before Lincoln, a couple other little downtown hangouts, and went to the game, and that just magical. Was seeing the words scripted up on the pillar, the corner pillar of the stadium, and I fell in love with college football that day. It was a game that I would say the Miami Nebraska Orange Bowl in '83 was my number one game of all time. But the number 1B would be this Missouri-Nebraska game where it was back and forth, and Missouri ended up winning. It was just an incredible display of college football, and it's still stuck with me. That guy, Kel Winslow at the Johnny the Jet dinner last month, and he was still talking about it. So anyway, yeah, there's so many a lot of the '98 Frank Stoltz's first game at Louisiana Tech. One of the great performances. Tim Rattay, I can't remember the wide receiver's name.
Troy Edwards, 408.
Yeah, they made Frank's first game very nervous.
I was at a wedding and I had an earbud in. I'm not going to lie.
A wedding in football season?
Wasn't my wedding. My wedding's during football season, but it was during a bye week. I send Bill Bird a thank you card every year. Because he got rid of San Jose State.
That's great.
It's funny how the times have changed, because just this winter I was at a wedding on the first day of the college football playoff, and I got my phone pulled up. I didn't have no earbud. I had it sitting down
you had to watch.
I had it on the pew, and a whole group of people in the row behind me looking over my shoulders. What's going on? Michigan's down to TCU? So we had that. But Tom, it is funny how you mentioned that Missouri-Nebraska game back in the day. It's kind of your welcome to college moment, if you will, with college football. And in comparison, mine was when Ohio State came to Lincoln in 2017 and didn't punt once en route to a 56-14 victory. So with that in mind, it's a miracle that I ended up in this field that I got into, covering Nebraska football, because that was a day J.T. Barrett, I think, had like 8 touchdowns or something crazy like that.
Then
7
Joe
or 8.
Burrow came in and had another 8.
Yeah. So
that was one of those games. Another one like the 2003 K-State game, where allegedly Steve Peterson was running around the press box or the suites saying, "I'm going to fix this. I'm going to fix this." If we could go back in time, especially me, and really appreciate at the time K-State hadn't won a Lincoln in like 20 years or so, or however long, and that was like. All the alarms went off, but I'm not sure they should have. I mean, yeah, it was a bad scene. K-State kind of ran it up, and I remember the K-State band was like the last to leave in the stadium. They were playing the Wabash Cannonball Fight song, and all the Husker fans leaving. I mean, it was pretty shocking. That was a great K-State team that won the Big 12 that year. Mm-hmm. So. well, I think we maybe overreacted a little bit, but that's just kind of where everything was then. But that was a great performance. Ohio State 17. That was another one of those. I think they had Bill Moose the next day, and then it was a month later Scott Frost. But that was one of those. I remember that one because of all the red lights. The red lights driving away at halftime. Long lines of red lights up on campus. Everybody driving away. So there's a million of those memories. Unfortunately, a lot more good than bad.
Tom Shatel's with us, Omaha World Herald, Hail Varsity Radio. Tom, going to get into some of the thoughts from Coach Rhule last night with the Husker Network, and we were talking about this in hour one. Wanted to get your feel here on kind of the narrative on the offensive line by Coach Rhule. Do you like the fact he's talking his guys up?
Yeah, it's I worry about it, though, because people are so anxious to get fired up that I hope he's not overhyping them. I mean, the line I saw last year was, it had its moments, but they're too banged up and not enough chemistry, not nearly enough blocking, I just wonder about, if it's too much. But I'm just going to sit back and I'm not going to have any expectations this season whatsoever. I'm going to sit back and watch. It's year one, and I think the answer is going to be somewhere in the middle, where I think the Rhule's first seasons have been 2-9 type deals. But he has said this program that he's inheriting is farther along than the one he inherited at Temple and Baylor. So that leads you to believe, well, maybe they could be better. But haven't we all been burned enough by this stuff? So I'm just going to sit back and watch. But I think the second year of Donovan Rhule is helpful. I think it's going to be very helpful. I think the style of offense you run is so important with the offensive line. Now, Frost was never going to, they weren't hitting in practice. So how do you, so the fact that they're more physical in practice, they're hopefully going to run the ball more, at least not all the time, at least enough to where these guys are going to act like offensive linemen. So, I'm cautiously optimistic, but I think what he's doing is also psychological. He doesn't want to come in and go, like, in a lot of ways, Scott did that the first year. Well, we're out of shape, and we're this and we're that, and we're, we'll wait till we get our players, blah blah blah. He's not doing any of that. He's embracing what he's got, and that might be worth something. I'm not saying it's worth a game or whatever, but you watch next fall. That might be worth, I think, an edge some game where these guys have, there's a confidence there. Confidence, the best confidence comes from actually doing it and actually winning. But I think he's not running anybody down. He's not running anybody off. He's not trying to say this is going to be forever. I think he's going about it the right way. We'll just see how that works.
Tom, what's your read from what we've heard from Matt Rhule this spring on where Nebraska's at? Because you laid it out. Nebraska's in a different spot now than Temple and Baylor were. And if you compare it to building a house, he's stepped up at Temple and at Baylor with really just an empty plot of land in front of him, and he had to do all the construction. But now he steps in to a place at Nebraska where some of the framing's already been done. I think the question that remains for Husker fans and for people in Husker media is he going to be able to build off that foundation, that framing, or is there going to have to be teardown that is required before he can start constructing his own way? And based on what you're hearing from Matt Rhule here this spring, do you think which side of that we're on, or is that going to wait until fall to see how much deconstruction needs to be done before he can start his build?
Yeah, I think it's I look at this as two things. One, what can you do next year in the interim, the short term, but the long term, the long game? I think this is it's a building block here, but there's a little bit of excitement because we saw Jeff Sims. He's got a little something. Now, how that translates, I don't know. But there's something to work with here. To me, the story with Matt Rhule is going to be that, okay, Temple and Baylor were sort of rock bottom deals where he built it up and then he left. Okay, this is but they didn't have the potential. Nebraska has the legacy, the heritage, a tradition, the possibilities. The people believe you can go all the way to the top here, and they back it up with the money and the facilities and NIL and so on and so forth. I mean, it's literally could be a top 10 program again, and that's why I'm anxious to see. Okay, this spring I saw Matt Rhule, some ranking of there's a million rankings on the internet, on Twitter. He was ranked like 24th among college football coaches. And that's probably fair. I want to see where Matt Rhule can go staying here 5 or 6, 7 years. Where does the program go? How good does he get? And how good is he? Was he just waiting for the right situation where it could all come together? He builds at a place where you can live at the highest levels. Certainly Baylor has done that too, but Nebraska has more than they do in Baylor. It's just a better situation all around. I'm anxious to see where could he be one of those elite top coaches in the country here by staying 4, 5, 6 years. I think to me that's the story I'm going to watch.
Tom, about 30 seconds here. Back to the Coach Rhule comment about the O-line. It was more so, in my mind, about the buy-in rather than overhyping the talent, and obviously buy-in doesn't necessarily translate to immediate success. Is that something that you expect to have kind of be like a slow burn in terms of success with the O-line?
Yeah, O-line, I love those guys. I went to the Hail Varsity event that they had Pipeline had. I'm a big Pipeline guy, and I covered those guys, and there's a certain thing those guys have, the swagger, that has been missing for so long, and that comes with repeated success, and it also comes with an offense that enables an offensive line to get momentum, to gather steam, and keep pounding away, play after play after play, repetition. That's how you made a great offensive line, and I'm anxious. That is what I think has to happen this year. I think that's the most important piece of the Matt Rhule era here is the offensive line, and they do nothing else next year. Whenever, how many games, whatever. I think they need to establish that offensive line again, and they can do that with the play calling and the style of offense and how you practice offense. That's where it all starts. I think this is a big year to get that going again, and I think the signals all point toward that can happen. It won't all come together this year, but the beginning of the comeback, the pipeline, can happen this year. So, and it's great to have a head coach who's into that, right? He mentions it. Other head coaches just say, "Yeah, whatever." That was not a huge priority. This one's a priority, and you could tell. And I think it's going to be fun to watch.
Tom Shatel. Tom, we'll do this again, bud. Thanks for the time today.
Hey, guys, thanks.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it at Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. Let's talk some baseball. Get caught up on the Diamond, Joba Chamberlain, Standout Husker Hall of Famer, World Series champ, joins us. Joba, it's not quite let's play 2 for Nebraska baseball, but let's finish 1 and make sure things go the right way if you're wearing red and white a little bit after 7 p.m. How you doing?
Everything's good. Let's hope we finish on the right foot, because it was a little rough weekend for the boys.
It was. You took 1 from Maryland. Maryland's the class of the Big Ten. You've got a brutal log jam to make Omaha here in late May. Nebraska's still in the thick of it, but it's just been a weird year when you look at offense and you look at individual accolades and numbers with the power in the lineup, and yet your pitching's been up and down, or days your pitching's been good, your offense hasn't been. And I guess I'm going to ask you the question, expecting you to know, and you may or may not, but why do you think it's been so much of a roller coaster this year, considering the obvious talent on the diamond?
I don't know. It's just, like you said, I think weird is the best way to describe it, just because there are times when everything clicks, and there's times where, one shows up, one doesn't. And I mean, you see the talent across the board and how deep we are and the things that we've done. It's just, I think where it falls into it is the inconsistency that we've had on the mound. And, we've seen when it's good and it's good, but we've seen when it's bad, it's really bad. And, I think it's trying to find that common goal and realizing when, we're going to give up runs. That's just the way it is. But trying to minimize those 4-run innings, those 6-run innings, and you definitely can't have them, back to back or every other inning. And I just think the inconsistency that we've had on the mound has been probably our biggest culprit.
Totally agree with you there. Is a good health check for a baseball program your midweek record? I look at when Nebraska was regional good. They went to regionals under Darren and even under Rhule, and the combined those years, Nebraska was, I think, 32-15 overall. I might be off a touch, maybe even 31-10. That's the record anyway. You're plus 15-20 over 500 in your midweek games. Is that a fair health check? Obviously, conference weekend numbers, are you winning more series than you're losing, but midweek takes a certain mental approach, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's part of what it is like, some of these midweek games we're playing, it's just because our numbers, we don't play this game on paper. Like, you still got to go out and prove it, and you still got to do those things. And I think it's a lot of opportunity too, because you are playing some teams that shouldn't even be in the same field as you. But that being said, we don't play it on paper. We got to go out and finish 9 strong innings. And, we've just seen it's come to bite us in the butt a few times. And, our midweek games are just as important. And I think maybe even a little bit more important, because taking that momentum and using it going into like a Maryland series, or no matter who it is. And I don't care if they're ranked, if they're not ranked, they're putting their 9 best on the field, and we got to beat them. And just because our numbers are better and we're a better hitting team or whatever, that even means more to go out and prove it, because now people are looking at the numbers and they're coming after you. And sometimes it's when you feel like you're being the hunter and not the hunted, it changes the game a little bit. So I think those midweek games were super important. And I think for a lot of reasons, and the fact that maybe, you give somebody a chance in a midweek game that you maybe not would have in a weekend series, and now you find something. And now that's something that you can add to the depth on the weekend when it's a little bit different than conference play.
Joba, throughout your career, did you ever pitch in a series that the pitching staff gave up 38 runs? That's how many it was this weekend against Maryland. 38 runs across 3 games. And I want to get your take on just how a bullpen can respond to that with finishing a huge game against Creighton. You're tied at 4 in the bottom of the 7th inning, and then you have another one following that game. It's 2 big games against Creighton. Do you worry about the confidence of a bullpen following a weekend performance like they had?
You know what? I think this is the best thing that could happen because you don't have time to think about it. You don't have time to, okay, what didn't we do? It's like, okay, we got home, did what we needed to do Monday. We got to get back out. It's just, you got a short-term memory. You got to let it go. I mean, easier said than done, and I've been there. But to answer your first question, I don't have any idea if I've ever given up 38 runs in a weekend series. I mean, that's crazy. But having these 2 important games where you can't take a breath, especially coming into, the first game where, you got a 3-inning game. I mean, that's the way you got to look at it. And you don't have time to sulk and worry about what happened this weekend. You've got to get after these 2 games because they're important because, sitting in the situation we're in right now, it's getting down to the nuts and bolts of what's going to happen for our postseason grind and if we get that opportunity.
As a former standout, is there any excuse or reason that Nebraska, especially if it's in Omaha, shouldn't make the top 8 in the Big Ten League? We know that Maryland's pretty good. We know Indiana's strung some things together. Iowa did what they did to Nebraska in their 3 games. But, I mean, the top 8 of this league doesn't really scare anybody. And that's just that's an angry take if you're a Nebraska baseball fan, but it's true when you look at, again, the paper part of this.
Yeah, I mean, when you go through it, it's like we've shown that we can beat anybody in the division, and I guess it's kind of a backhanded compliment or however you want to say it. It's like, okay, we're not scared, but yet we're still at the risk of not making the tournament. Mm-hmm. And that's the scary part. And it's knowing that we have the ability and we have the talent and everything to not even be questioning this and having those feelings and knowing that we can play with anybody and just believing it, but it's also believing it. You still have to execute it. And, that's just, it comes down, it's top to bottom. It's hitting, defense, pitching, the mental awareness of certain plays and just being locked in and understanding and being a step ahead and knowing, what happens if this happens and just going through the game before it happens. And I think that's a huge part of the mental aspect where sometimes we lapse a little bit, where we necessarily, I agree, staying in the moment, but I also understand trying to be a step ahead. Okay, now if he goes here, he's probably going to locate in. So now I'm probably going to shift over one side. And so it's just trying, instead of playing checkers, let's play chess. And that's the one thing that I always love about pitching is he's thinking what I'm going to do and I'm thinking what he's going to do. I'm reading his feet. I'm watching what his hands do. I'm watching his takes. And just to try and be that one step ahead. And I think if we focus on that and necessarily think about what's going to happen, then you can make that happen.
Joba Chamberlain's with us at Hail Varsity Radio. Joba, a couple of guys that are in line for postseason awards. You got Max and Bryce, and you've seen some of the best in the business for a long time. Tell me how you think they translate to the next level.
I'd like to see Bryce's defense a little bit better, a little bit more consistency. I mean, he has the tools. He has the frame. He has the makeup. He has everything that needs to be there. And it's just, I think, clean up some defensive stuff. I think his swing gets a little long every once in a while. As far as Max goes, I love his approach. The way he stays through the baseball, he's a gamer. He's a kid that loves to play. And, I think second base is a great fit for him. I think it fits his game a little bit better than third necessarily did. Mm-hmm. And, I think they're going to have an opportunity for sure. It's Bryce is that athletic, long shortstop. And then you got Max, that's the thicker second baseman that can hit for power and hit for average and is just consistently consistent. And, they're both great. They're both going to have an opportunity and hope that they continue to grow. They continue to grow in their game, not only physically, but mentally, and continue to believe that they are great, because once you believe it, you have to go execute and get it done. But it's a fun process to go through.
Joba, you talk about belief here. I know we need to get to some prep baseball too, so maybe last thought here on the Huskers, but you talk about belief. Do you think this team still has it in them with this closing stretch to the season to develop some belief, get hot at the right time? Because you think about Major League Baseball, sometimes all it comes down to is who gets hot in September. Do you think this Husker baseball team still has enough time to get hot before the Big Ten tournament and any potential postseason play after that?
100%. And I think tonight's huge. I think tonight is, we start 0-0, and, you go get 2 big wins, create momentum going into the last weekend. And then, Elijah, exactly what you said, you get hot at the right time. Those are the most dangerous teams ever. I mean, we've seen what the Rockies did when they won 26 games in September. Next thing you know, they sweep everybody, and then they just have time to rest in the World Series and then get beat. But they got hot at the right time, and it pushed their postseason even further than they thought they would get. And I think the Huskers used these 2 games as building blocks for that momentum going into the last weekend, and then have a great weekend, and you never know what's going to happen.
Joba State Baseball, brackets are out. Millard West, the top seed. You've got East in at the 2 seed. Familiar names in Grand Island and Gretna and Prep, and Bell West, the 7 seed, along with Papio South and Elkhorn South. You've seen all of them. Can East put a run together? Is this Millard West to lose as the top seed? Give me a quick little take on Class A's championship round for baseball.
Yeah, we've played them all, and not happy that our name's not on there, but I think East does. I mean, they've got 4 quality pitchers that they can run out there. Just a very sound baseball team. They can hit. They're aggressive. Millard West is Millard West. It's just, that's who they are. They've just got talent up and down the board. Elkhorn South is a team that we played a lot. They beat us to get into state, and they've got 4 D1s, I think 12 total kids going to play in college. Grand Island is scrappy. They're led by a great coach in Kirby Wells. And I think it's a 3-man race if I would have to say, between Elkhorn South, East, and Millard West. But you know what? It's going to be fun to watch, just because you've seen all these kids from travel ball to what school they play for now, and you grew up with some playing with them, and now just to see all these kids and the success that they've had, it's really cool to see.
Joba, tell me a little bit about the Lincoln East baseball program. I know you've had a chance to see them a couple of times. They, if I remember correctly, got the 3 seed, maybe it was the 2 seed for the state baseball tournament. So I just want to get your take on what they can bring to the field. I know that they lost a little bit of talent last offseason, and they only came back stronger this year.
Yeah, we split with them this year. We beat them once. They beat us once. And they had a great year. They consistently throw the ball really well. And I think, especially in high school, when you've got some guys that can, get up there and some velo a little bit, but then you got guys like Paul Shortridge and Carter Mick that, Paul Shortridge is going to go out there and he is such a fan of the game, and he is such a smart kid that he just, he can pick you apart, and he's not going to blow you away, but he's going to spin it. He's going to pull and push, and he just a really, really smart pitcher, and and even more so, he's a great kid. And Carter Mick, he went out and threw a 2-hitter and punched out 11 to get them to state, and he just has a great feel for pitching. They're both from the left side, and then you've got Chase Nelson and Connor Johnson from the right side, and it's just they're deep, and they have a lot of weapons to beat you, and It just the consistency of it. But anybody can beat on any given day. I mean, we've always played them tough, and they're going to have a shot, and it'll be fun to see because, at least it's not always the Omaha and the Elkhorns. At least, now we got a little bit of love in there too. So, you always hate them when you're going against them, but you always root for them when they're going against the Millard West and the Elkhorns.
Joba Chamberlain's with us, Husker great and World Series champ. Joba, you look at Class B and a lot of representation. Really cool to see the Wahoo program in state. Norris is Norris. They've got an incredible program. Scott's in it. And then Beatrice is a 5 seed. So some regional representation too. But I haven't seen a bunch of B. And I know, Elijah, you've umped some of these kids for a while. But B representing at least Lancaster and south of Lancaster well here for state.
Yeah, they've had a good run. I mean, Beatrice obviously has created a program. Norris is Norris. And, it's just, Waverly upsetting Norris last year and obviously Waverly not getting in. But it's nice to see that these towns around here and all the kids that have played with or against each other, get these opportunities because, this might be the greatest baseball memory they get because a lot of them aren't going to go on and do anything further. But it's just so cool to see this area start to thrive and just to see the talent in Lincoln is starting to get to the same point as Omaha because we've always literally been, the step behind per se. But, now just the level of competitiveness across the board at all levels is really fun to see.
Joba will say fare thee well. Thanks so much for the insight as always, bud, and we'll get caught up, talk some more ball here down the road.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me, boys.
Good to get caught up with Joba Chamberlain. Of course, Nebraska trailing Creighton right now. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark. Hail Varsity Radio winding down a Tuesday. Get the podcast downloaded, checked out, or the video portion of the show, Hail Varsity YouTube channel. You can watch the full show there. Get the segments you like with Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, with Hail Varsity Radio on the Hurrdat Family Network.
And a quick note here, Husker Baseball has now gone final with Creighton. Nothing doing in the 9th inning. They fall 6-5 to Creighton in a game that they took the lead on in the bottom half of the 7th. So
that was so bad to have the bases loaded, no out, and you get one run.
One run, and it wasn't even on solid. It's on a sacrifice fly. You get the one run on a sacrifice fly, first batter of the game, take the lead, nothing else doing in the bottom half, and then Creighton, great hitting. Nebraska plunked a batter to start the top half of the 8th, and Creighton pushes across 2, and that's all she wrote.
Well, and think about the momentum that this puts into the next game that they have to play in an hour.
Thereof.
So,
pretty tough. Let's get an update here from Coach Kirk Ferentz with the gambling situation. You've got a total of 26 student athletes from Iowa, 15 from Iowa State. As the gambling probe, we'll have some thoughts from Scott Dochterman in a moment.
Also, one employee for the University of Iowa, and I think that's what Kirk Ferentz gets into here.
Yeah, and there's been some questions here about point shaving in football. I'm not kidding.
Due to the ongoing investigation into alleged gambling improprieties at the University of Iowa, I cannot get into specifics. However, I would like to address one issue. Although it certainly would explain a lot, and I mean an awful lot, there is no truth to my son Brian shaving the hell out of points during games. None whatsoever. It was simply ineptitude. I won't be taking questions at this time. Thank you.
There's a long, silent, "Hey, Dad, can you pass the potatoes?" at the Ferentz household.
Well,
for Sunday dinner.
For all
my kid is a man-child. He's garbage. He can't call plays. My wife won't talk to me if we don't keep him working. It wasn't point shaving. He's just that bad.
For what it's worth, there's been a lot out there.
That was funny.
For what it's worth, there's been a lot out there about the dangers of AI and all these different videos that are coming out. But there's some beauty in it. In something like this, where Kirk Ferentz makes a statement and someone goes, let's throw Brian Ferentz in there a little bit too. Let's get a quote from Kirk Ferentz. That's the beauty of AI. Well, lead problems to our society years down the road.
It'll be Terminator 1 and 2 all over.
Yeah, probably. But for now, I think we can laugh at the funny little Twitter videos that people make making fun of Brian Ferentz. For now, I'll enjoy it.
That was too good. But right now, you have the Iowa Racing and Gaming Commission administrator weighing in. Hasn't been any information or issues that have been raised with the integrity of the markets involving the two universities. So if there's wagering that's gone on, that's a no-no. It's not been on or against your own team.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, big thanks, Tom Shatel, Mitch Sherman, Joba Chamberlain, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark. Tomorrow, Evan Bland will be with us, Mike Babcock. We'll see if we can run down Mike Schuhart. Maybe you guys just do tomorrow, and I'll go physically run down Mike Schuhart and go play 18.
Hey.
That'd be all right.
For you.
It'd be great for me. Although when I did play 9 with my buddy Nate, it just was so bad to the left. I mean, it was the Seinfeld episode with McDowell and Kramer getting hit back and to the left. The old Kennedy assassination reenactment from the Seinfeld episode. It was down the left field line. Feet were bad. Follow through was awful. Round 1. And quite honestly, I just focused on the Busch Light.
See, this is why I focus on hobbies. I like the beer on the course part of golf. The actual golfing part I'm not very good at, so I focus on hobbies that I am good at. Camping is one that Schmitty always has a problem with. Hey, it's a good hobby. It's a good hobby to have. Just set up a tent anywhere. Sleeping in nature, one of the greatest joys in life. The other one, bowling. I'm good at bowling. I can handle that.
We went camping in high school, and every parent knows what the hell's going on. Yeah, we're going camping. And, like, who's your buyer? Dad, that's like...
No, it's the sleeping in nature part, guys.
It's the poison ivy. Any girls going with you? Well, no. Why are you going camping then? I mean, so...
We're getting out in nature. We're going to make a bonfire, have a nice fire, cook some food over it, and enjoy quality time with your friends without being distracted by media and all of that. You should have nice time with your friends that has been so gone away in recent society.
How old are you again?
Yeah.
I thought you were like 24.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know, man.
Yeah, you're just not a camper. It's okay. It's okay. I think a little bit less of you because of it, but it's okay.
No, I think I'm a pinky in the air jerk, and give me the glamping. Give me Uncle Andy's RV.
Mm-hmm.
That was extraordinary for football games, but the tent and nature, and can't do it. Won't do it. Unless it's like the camping scenes you see out of Yellowstone. The TV show where there's this incredible brook next to you, and there's mountains, and then there's a bear. And he's angry.
Me and a couple of friends are trying to book a trip this summer to go up to the Wind River Range in Montana and do a backpacking trip for a week up there. And that's what the goal would be. Obviously, there'd be a lot more mosquitoes and bugs
bears
than they'd show in Yellowstone. We get some bear spray and go up and just enjoy nature for a week.
Bear spray?
Yeah.
Did you ever hear the story?
Thing?
You ever see that? It was like a screenshot that was going viral on Twitter a couple weeks back where this guy in his dorm room just sprayed a whole bunch of bear spray in his dorm room, and his quote was, "to see if it works." And like there's a whole bunch of people texting in the little dorm room group chat, "What the hell's going on? It smells awful in here. My eyes are burning." And he sends one back, "Hey guys, apologies. I released some bear spray. I recommend you open your windows and maybe take a couple hours away from the dorm. That's what I'm doing. We'll talk to you guys tonight." He just left.
Being the king of Ferris Bueller land, suburbia, did you go camping as a kid?
Not really.
No, you're right. You didn't. You went to the city.
Well, and we had I know people with lake houses.
Yeah, you and the Danny Burks of the world that have lake houses.
I mean, I personally don't, but I know people who have lake houses.
But that's the important thing. You don't got a jack with paying for it. You just show up to them. Good work. Okay, we'll have this further discussion. We'll take votes on yay or nay on camping. Rick Barnes, the best joke ever. We'll tell off air sometime about camping. Take care.